I think we are live. I'm going to give this a second to catch up because there's a bad delay. Make sure we've got audio. All that fun stuff. We'll just sit here and stare at each other awkwardly as I wait. And wait, this is taking a longer than usual time. Let's try refreshing that and see if that helps. I may be sitting here talking to myself. Yep, looks like... Oh, it's loading. I have a... But there we go. Let's see if there is audio now. Yep, there is audio. Looks like we are ready. Okay. Audio live. Thanks, Joseph. Now I am recording. I don't know that I really need to record this. I doubt I'll do anything with the footage, but, you know, just in case. So, for tonight, I am working on... I'm using the Frederick's pad of paper. That is this one here, and just for transparency, I'm sponsored by Frederick's. I use their products anyway, so I would have recommended this regardless. But this is a canvas pad that is really good for practice. Now, this is archival, and if, I mean, you could frame this and sell artwork on it. I wouldn't. I would rather just use a stretched canvas, but this is really, really nice. You can see how I've got it taped to my board. It's so nice for practice. It's not as smooth as like the Blue Label. I do like the Blue Label better, but for practice, this is great. And for me, I really didn't want to waste the whole canvas for tonight's project, so I thought this would be a good fit. I'm actually going to contact Frederick's and get more of those. I don't know why I don't have more or use them more often because they're actually pretty cool. So let's go ahead and get my palette ready. It's mostly ready. This is actually the paint that I used for, what did I paint last? Was it the, I think it was the fish. Was it the fish? No. What did I paint last? I don't even remember. But it's been a couple of weeks, and this paint is still all sitting in here and good. When I actually recorded, I opened this up to record the some of the B-roll for the intro to acrylic painting, and when I was scraping it, I was really surprised how much of this was still completely wet weeks later, just from putting a wet paper towel in here. So some of this is starting to dry, so I can scrape some. Oops, that's definitely not dry. Let's just get some of this out of the way. Okay, I don't even think that's the blue I'm going to use. I'm going to use as much of this paint as possible just because, why waste it? What was I painting? Oh, it's the dolphins that are behind me. That's what this paint is from. That was going to drive me crazy. Okay, so this paint, this is the Liquitex Basics. It's what I typically use. I don't know if you can see on the palette here, but this is a bit, I don't know, chunky. It's not as smooth as what you see with others, but once I mix water in with it, it's fine. You're not going to notice any difference. It's a little bit annoying. It's like it starts to dry and go, I want to say go bad, but it's not really bad because I can still make it work. I can still use it. So that's, you'll see as I add water here. See, you can start seeing, well, I think you can start seeing the chunks. But once I add the water and really mix it, kind of stir it together, now it's perfectly smooth like it originally was. So I don't love that it does that, but it doesn't bother me enough to stop using it. And certain colors seem to be more prone to this than others. Brown, a lot of my brown colors from the Liquitex Basics will do that. This one is the Cobalt Blue, so that one does it. And I think, I'm trying to think what other colors were really bad with it. Those are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. The browns are some of the worst. But like I said, once I add a little bit of water, mix that in, it's totally usable, totally fine. It's not something that I wouldn't use because of it, but if you see that happen, that's my solution. Okay, so I'm going to need more white too for this one. Now when I paint clouds, I'm getting paint on me. When I paint clouds, I always have a reference photo. Yep, out of there, paint. I recommend always having a reference photo just as a guideline, but at the same time, I never copy the reference photo exactly. Because the way that I'm going to blend this, it's kind of one of those what happens, happens, and we're just going to let that go. So I'm not super, super picky trying to make every little detail the same as my reference photo. The thing that you want to watch for, actually, let me rinse this brush before I ruin it. 1 second. Just rinse that and we will set that to the side. Okay, well, the thing that you want to watch for when you are drawing clouds or painting clouds is the shape that you're going with. One of the problems that a lot of people have when they're new to clouds is they want to make everything look like baked potatoes, poofy baked potatoes, but they do this. And everything has, you know, it's poofy, but it's all baked potato shapes. Now, yes, some clouds can look like that. Not all clouds should look like that, and that typically doesn't look so great. One of the best, or I don't want to say best, an easy way to kind of get a better shape. See how they come up? I'm going to flatten it out. I get these other shapes in here. This is a much better type of shape. I'm going to get it in different sections than these. So let's darken that up, just make sure you can see it. So see how it's not a baked potato. This generally, and layers of this, so you know, I'll have different sections coming out, will look better than a bunch of those. So avoid baked potatoes. Jesse wants to know if this is the first time using this paper. It is not. I've used it, actually I used to use it a lot with my students, or I had students that would buy it and bring it into class. But no, I don't think I've done a video using it before. I'm going to start doing it more just because it wouldn't make sense for me to waste a full canvas, being that this isn't really a complete painting. It's just a demonstration on clouds. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I want to start with just getting a background on this, and I'm going to fade from a light blue to a darker blue, just to start. Now, one way that I've seen a lot of students jump in, and while it can be done that way, it also can be a little bit overwhelming, is to try to paint around, paint the clouds and then paint the sky around it. Unless you're going for something very impressionistic or a looser feel, not even impressionistic, just looser brushstrokey type feel, that with acrylics is not going to come out that smooth. With oils, not a problem because of how slow it dries. But with acrylics, I find that it works better and you get better results if you do your background first, that background sky color. What are you guys in chat talking about? Bacon and cheddar tastes great. Oh my gosh. All these food suggestions. What are you doing? That fine art guy, I don't know if I've heard of those kind of frogs. Okay, I'm going to start with light. My really light blue. Wow, that is really blue. That is too blue for what I need here. I need to tone that down a bit. Let's see if unbleached titanium white. Yeah, that gives me a much better blue. That was like, whoa, that's electric blue. Not what I want. So this is a much, much better light blue color. And I'm just going to start here, kind of a muddy color, basically. And I'm going to pull that along the side. Now, I don't know if you can see this well on the canvas, but if you can see these little dots, that means I need more paint and more water on my brush. I need to reload it. It doesn't have enough. So get some more of that in there. It can also happen if your canvas is, ooh, this is way too light or too dark, so I'll have to work on that. But it can also happen if your canvas is too rough. Mine's going to be a little bit more rough than what you typically see me work on. Not as rough as some things, but still a little bit more tooth than I personally prefer. So this is way, way too dark. So I'm going to just throw some white on there. I'll probably end up doing 2 layers to get this where I want it. Oh, that's not terrible. But get a good amount of paint on there. One of the problems that I see a lot of students make is that they're too afraid to mess up, so they don't use enough paint. You definitely need, oh, the potato clouds were green onions and sour cream. I'm with you on that. But yeah, you don't want just a teeny tiny bit of paint. I'll see where students will do that, and it's like this, like just a little bit of paint. Push harder on that brush, get that paint in there, and load more paint on the brush. Now, I started with the light color and worked up to the dark because it is easier to darken things generally than it is to make them lighter. So if I would have gone really dark and then tried to lighten that up, that's going to be a lot harder than working light to dark in this case. Whoa, barking dog. Not my barking dog, by the way. I'm going to put a little bit of green in that. Just a teeny bit so that that blue is not so... There we go. That's a better color. What is my opinion on Liquitex slow dry blending medium? I don't like any of those. Like, I absolutely hate them. They change the consistency of the paint. And I don't know of a single artist, and I'm sure there's some out there I just don't know of, but I don't know of a single artist whose work is something that I look at and go, okay, that's what I want my work to look like. I don't know of, oh, come on. I know whose dog's that is, and it drives me insane. He does it. That dog wakes me up every single freaking day. Anyway, non-stop barking. But anyway, moving on. The blending mediums, they make the paint have a really weird texture, a consistency that I don't like, and I have never seen an artist who used that, whose work I looked at and thought, that's exactly what I want mine to look like. The artists who I've looked at and thought, okay, that's what I'm hoping to achieve, they're working like this. Okay, so I'm just going to soften that out some. I'm taking a mop brush, which isn't really a mop brush. This is a blush brush. And I'm going, see, I'm going in every direction. Now I'm starting to get streaks, which means I'm starting to get too much paint on this brush. So what I'm going to do is dry some of that off, just go in some circles. There's not a lot on there. But if this brush gets wet at all, whether it be from water or from paint, not going to work for you. It's just going to create strokes. Now, I don't honestly need this to be perfectly smooth just because I know I'm going to put clouds over it. And if something has a big like area that's not as smooth as what I want, I just throw a cloud over it. No big deal. This is actually a decent place to start. We'll go ahead and let that dry. And yeah, the colors, well, part of the reason the colors are different is what I'm mixing. But yeah, the white definitely looks a little too white or too blown out on the palette. Not much I can do about that. Unfortunately, with these webcam cameras, they're pretty limited. But every time I try to use my good camera for the live streams, the first time worked fine, and every time since, I don't know what's going on with the settings. It's recording in low quality, or it's airing in low quality, and then keeps disconnecting and causing buffering. So, not much I can do there. Actually, the canvas, though, I was messing with that. Let me see while that dries if I can fix it, because this looks kind of purple on the canvas, and it should not. Now that it's no longer white, I may be able to adjust that. Let's see. Configure video. That's not quite right. The white balance is clearly off, though. Let me see if I can. That looks closer. Brighten it up a bit. Give me 1 second to get this looking a little bit more like what it looks like in person. I want it to be as close as possible. That is pretty close. Whoa, too much. Go back, go back. I think that's pretty good. Much closer anyway to what it should be. Okay, we'll leave that there for now. Okay, back to your questions while we let that dry. Actually, while we let that dry, plug your ears really quick. I'm going to hair dry this, and then I'll come back and answer some questions while we let it cool. Okay, we're going to let that set for a minute. I'm going to answer a quick couple of questions. Lynn said, I know today you didn't use this paper, but where do you get your pink arches paper? I got it from dickblick.com or Jerry's Artorama. I'm nearly positive, though, that it was Dick Blick. Vladimir said, I am trying water-soluble oils, Winsor & Newton. Do you have any suggestions for making it more creamy? It's too thick, in my opinion. Any mediums, perhaps? The only way that I've ever used water-soluble oils and like them is if I use them like real oils or regular oils and mix them with my my brain just shut off for a second there. Mixed it with my liquid. Water soluble oils and I don't play nicely together. It's just not my preference. I know they can look amazing, but I just like my regular oil. So when I use them, after my failed attempts, or attempts that I didn't like, I should say, I just started using them with my regular oils, and then they were okay. But I thin them with that. You'll have to do some research. I know Lori McNee, she uses water-soluble oil. She does amazing work. I don't know if she's got a YouTube channel, but I know she has a blog on her website. I bet you she tells you what she uses, so I would contact her. Valerie, oh, let's see. Yeah, Valerie said, the Logitech Brio does a much better job, and you can do very fine detail and tuning of colors. I will have to look into that. I'm out of money right now. Taxes killed me. I owed so much more than what my tax person had anticipated. So, I didn't have quite enough saved. So I'm kind of, yeah, I'm on hold on most of my shopping right now. But good. Remind me, Valerie, if you can remind me of that, or send me a message on Facebook so I can look into that. Actually, what I need to figure out is how to, I have the converter that should let my good camera work, but it's not. I don't know if it's just not compatible with the Cam Link. So I may just, I don't know. I'm going to have to look into some other alternatives. I'm going to need to upgrade a lot of stuff. That's one of my goals coming up here, is to upgrade a lot of my stuff for live streaming, because I'm not thrilled right now with the quality that I'm producing. Let's see. Whoops, scrolled too far. Mara said, hi, Lisa. Hi, Mara. Did you see the cake glazing I sent you in Messenger? Not yet. I have not looked through my Facebook messages. I don't check Facebook that often. Unless, like, I tell someone, hey, send me something, I'll go check it. But normally I don't. The reason was people were sending me so many messages, and I got so overwhelmed by the amount of messages that I just didn't have time to respond to, that I stopped going on Facebook altogether. And I'm like, this isn't working. So I'm like, my alternative is I'm just not going to look at Facebook Messenger at all. Not that I'm trying to ignore people, but I got so overwhelmed with the amount of questions that I just couldn't get to. And then I started feeling guilty, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go with the avoidance route. Stick my head in the sand and pretend I don't have Messenger. Let's see. Whoops. Rohan said, what acrylic paints did you start off with? They are the Liquitex Basic. Well, when I started painting, if you mean that, Liquitex Basics. Started off with today, also Liquitex Basics. They just work for me. I got the Liquitex Basics. The reason that I purchased those, I took my senior year in high school, I was in an AP studio art class where they just basically supplied you with all of the supplies that you needed, and would give you a theme like transparency. You need to go draw something transparent, and which was funny. Side story that has nothing to do with this. All the other students drew glasses, because glasses, not silverware, like stuff from the kitchen, plates and things that are transparent. Not me, I drew transparent tigers. We knew I was off to an odd start at that point. But anyway, we used the paint from Dick Blick. I didn't know where to get that, and this is before the internet, so I had no way to get that. So when I went to Michael's, they had the Liquitex Basics. I picked up a few basic colors of those, and that's just where I started. And over the years, I had used them for so long, I just kind of, I don't know if you want to say my technique adapted around the paint, or I made the paint adapt to my technique, but they just go well together. And so I've tried a lot of, I don't want to say every brand, but I've tried a lot of other brands that are good brands. I mean, even here, I have the Liquitex soft body and the heavy body, but for the majority of what I do, I just really like the Liquitex Basics. They work for how I work. So that's what I started with, and that's what, more than 20 years. Wow. That's been a long time. Later, I am using, let's see. Solu said, when I buy cheapish acrylics to get learning, they are all very thin. When I watch your paint, it looks very thick and heavily pigmented. Yes, get different paints. Now, if you're using Liquitex Basics, if you're saying, when you say cheapish acrylic, because some people will consider Liquitex Basics cheap acrylics. They are on the lower cost of things, but they're not as pigmented as like the soft body. For me, because of the way I glaze, I prefer that. But if you're using something like Reeves or Dowler and Rowney, or anything that comes in like a set, like you get your Easel and palettes and brushes and paints, those sets, I have never seen a good one. The paints in there are terrible. I give them to like kids or friends who have kids, give them to somebody else, because they're not even worth learning with, honestly. You can't layer the same, you can't blend the same, they don't do what you need them to do. So I would honestly say, if while learning, if cost is an issue, just go get a tube of black and titanium white and Mars Black Liquitex Basics. Get those two colors and learn to paint with those. And then as you get some more money saved up, get another color and then another color. What I do is go in with a 40% coupon once a week, go in and get a new color so you're getting a discount. But start with black, titanium white, Mars Black. You don't want to go with ivory black because it's too translucent. If you're just doing black and white, I really prefer Mars Black, titanium white. Those two colors are enough to start learning to paint. So that would be what I would recommend. Get a good paint to start with, even if that's only two colors. I would rather see a student learn with that than with 50 of bad paints that you can't learn well with. Whoops. Go back. Kristen said, my exams begin next week and I have to draw 3 different types of flowers. Any tips for coloring white flowers and colored pencil? On a 22 by 17 inch paper is start now. That's big. You definitely need to start now. But for white, just remember white is not white. White things are, the only things that will be white are your highlights, maybe the highlight in the eye, certain highlights, but not, obviously your flowers don't have eyes. But it's the very, very brightest parts. White is not white. Use an eye matching tool. I've got videos showing you how to do that in Photoshop. Look up Lachri and color matching. Use the eyedropper tool and you can see that the things that you think are white are sometimes dark gray, are dark blue, are dark, and you're going to see that today in these clouds. These clouds are not going to, there's not any straight white, none in these clouds. They're all going to be toned out, even though they're white clouds. You don't use just straight white, and that's going to be the same for the flowers. So this actually will probably help you. Susan wants to know how to glaze with acrylics. Look up a video with just do Lachri and grapes. I've got a glazing video specifically showing you that. It's easier for you to watch that than for me to try to talk you through it, how to do that, because I actually show you step by step on that one. So look up Lachri, glaze, and grapes. Those 3 terms should pull up that video for you. Someone said, is a glass tiger? Yep, I did. They were blue. There were 2 of them. I think one was laying down and one was standing. My mom still has that in her, it's in my old bedroom. I'll be going to visit them in California in the end of September. I'll get photos for you guys. I'll look those up because it's hilarious, but at the same time I can look at that and see, yeah, I can see how that's where I started and this is where I ended up. That makes sense to me. Okay, let's see. This is still a little tacky. When I do this, I don't know if you can hear how it's sticking. Hear that? This is not dry. I'm actually going to take the hairdryer to it because that paint must have been really thick. And it is really humid in here right now. I've got the window or the door open. So, yeah, we're going to dry this really quick. I'm going to let that cool and then say good enough. If it lifts, I'll show you what happens when you don't let paint dry all the way. Let's see. Kalina said, how do you get paint to stretch pretty far with a small amount on the palette? I think I need more information to answer that question. How do you get it to stretch pretty? I mean, I'm thinning it with water, but I don't really understand the question. I need more words in that question to help you. Mara Black. Oh wait, there's a question that is not highlighted. Is that for me? Valencia said, I want to draw anime, but I want to, I draw anime, but I want to expand. I've not been able to draw for months, and I decided to completely start over. Drawings are still good though. Do you think this is a good choice? What do you mean? I've not been able to draw for months. Decided to completely start over. I'm not. Question number 2, I think something's wrong with my brain because 2 questions and like one question I'll say, okay, you're not wording it well. 2 questions by 2 different people and I'm not understanding. I'm thinking my brain is not working today. Too much humidity maybe. I don't know what you mean by completely start over. Do you mean just not in drawing anime? I don't know what you mean there. Reword that and I'll try to answer it for you. Mara Black says, I love the Liquitex matte medium when I need to use one. Have you used this one? Yeah, I have. It'll actually make the paint less glossy, but it also seems to add a tooth that I don't love. So it's not my favorite, But it's weird. It changes the consistency. Wow, can't talk. So it's not my favorite for how I work. Thanks, Valerie. You know all the informations. Space Traveler said, I currently have colored pencils. I am saving up for a higher quality set of colored pencils, and I've seen many people raving about polychromos and luminance. Which set should I get first? That's such a hard question, and honestly, it's up to you. For me, I feel like I can do most everything with my polychromos because I can get the fine details. They're usually the first pencil I start with, but then if I need a more opaque color, like especially if I'm drawing portraits, if I want skin, super, super smooth blending, I really like the luminance. So it depends on which way you are going. I started with a full set of luminance, started with a full set of polychromos, and then I got a handful of luminance to test, like the whites, gray, some brown colors. I got a few of them. And then just after using that for a couple of months, I saved up and was able to get the full set. But don't, yeah, I mean, if I had to do it over again, I would do the same thing I did. I started with polychromos, got comfortable with those, and then got my wax-based pencils and used those. Another thing you can go with, too, if you want a wax-based set that's fairly inexpensive, there's only a 24 set, but the Derwent Drawing, those pencils are really waxy, so maybe those combined with your polychromos? It's honestly up to you, but if I had to do it again, I would do polychromos first. That's just me. But they're both must-haves for me, too. Not as sticky, but still a little bit. So I might have it lift, but I might just, we'll see. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and start with clouds. Now you can do a couple of things. If you are not comfortable with the shape of your cloud, or like just freehanding in clouds, take a white charcoal pencil and you can just kind of sketch in where you're going to want them to be. So again, get a reference photo. You don't have to copy it exactly. And I think it's important, for me anyway, I need to have in my head that I'm not going to worry about it being exact. Because if I do, I'm going to be frustrated and unhappy because it never comes out exactly like my photo. I let the paint kind of do what the paint wants to do, the way that I'm going to blend these. So, and I'll layer until I get to where I like them. But you can go ahead and sketch in your general shapes. So we'll start with that. Now, this is going to be a layering process. First few layers, not going to look very good. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush now. I am going with a filbert. See the rounded tip there? It's a tackle and bristled filbert. The reason that I want to go with a filbert and not a flat, I'm going to have really harsh start-stop points with each brush stroke. Here, if I have a start-stop point, it's just kind of a poofy, rounded look, which goes with the shape of the cloud. That fine art guy asked if I have any tips for taking pictures of your pets. Get on the floor with them or get down to their level. When you take photos, like if you're going to paint them, don't take a photo looking down at them. Sometimes that works. More often than not, it doesn't. Get down on the floor or put them up on a couch. Get it to where you're coming level at them. That's going to look a lot better. And treats. Train them. Train your pets. Like, it amazes me how many people have dogs they have not bothered to train. Train your dogs. The dogs love it. They have fun. It's fun to train dogs, and it's much happier for everyone to get along when they're well trained. But like with mine, I can control where they look by where I'm holding that treat or whatever else. And my dogs don't bark like that. Or if they do, I tell them to stop, and they stop. But anyway, train them so that you have that control too. I mean, not just for photos. It just makes for a happier environment for you and the pet when they're trained. But I can hold a treat wherever I want them to look. I try to take photos with natural light coming in, so you get strong light from one side, like early morning, late afternoon, which is pretty much always going to be late afternoon for me because I'm not awake early morning anymore. But that would be my biggest tip. Just get down with them. The amount of pet portraits I've done for people where they took photos of it and they're looking down at the dog, oh my gosh, those are really hard to make look good. Sometimes they look amazing. Usually not, though. Try to just get down even with the dog is my biggest tip. What brushes? Vladimir wants to know, what brushes do I use for oils and water-soluble oils? Any difference? No, I use the same. Like Taklon bristles are my favorite. Or, I'm sorry, no. For oils, synthetic hog hairs are my go-to. I use Taklon too, but synthetic hog hairs are probably, I use the most. And you said, let's see, also the plain synthetic brush is okay. Yeah, mine are all synthetic. That is what I use, and I mean like Artist Loft kind. I kind of like it. You know, I like generic brushes. That is one thing I am not that picky about. Almost all of them. I mean, okay, this one is a Royal Soft Grip. This one's generic from Hobby Lobby. This is a makeup brush. I mean, this one doesn't even have a name. I can't even tell you. It came at cheap little set in a canvas roll, and I use those a lot for different type of blending techniques. So I'm not one who's super picky about my brushes. If they work, they work. If you're saying, hey, I like this supply, go for it. And that I would say is true no matter what. Like where I'm telling you, don't use this paint. That one doesn't work the same. If you used it and you decided that it works for how you want things to look, go for it. It's fine. That's okay. Someone said, are you going to draw the clouds with a brush or a sponge? I'm going to use a brush. I'm going to go ahead and get this started before I answer some more questions. So I don't want to start with straight white. I'm going to actually do the same color I did earlier. We'll mix some of my blue, some unbleached titanium white. Gosh, words are so hard. I've got some water mixed in there, and I'm just going to start putting the color in there. Now look how dark this is. Good. I can lighten this up and I can darken from there. I'm just going to start getting my general shape for my cloud, and I'm kind of working this in little half circles. See how I've got these nice little poofy edges? I don't want them to be too much. There we go. Now as I move down here, it's just blending in, so I'm actually going to I can either lighten or darken. It doesn't matter because I'm going to put other colors on top. I'm just starting to get my general shape. So let's go ahead and just lighten it. These are all over here going to end up being like a purpley gray. So that's all going to change. I just want to get my shapes at this point. I'm going to make it easier on myself. A lot of it with painting, it's not that there's one right or wrong way. It's find what works best for you for getting the look you want, but is also easier. I'm always looking for the easiest way to do things. That's why so many of my paintings, if you watch, I'll do them different. I don't do the same thing every time because I'm always looking for a way that might look better or might be easier. While I do this, let's see. Whoops, scroll too far. Kalina said, okay, about my question you didn't understand. When you have a small amount of paint on your palette, how do you get it to cover large areas in the canvas? You put more paint on the palette. That is actually the answer. Okay, that's why I didn't understand it, because I'm like, maybe I'm just, no, you put more paint on the canvas. If there's not enough paint, then there's not enough paint. You're not going to make it go, you can thin it with water, but you're thinning it. You may end up thinning it too much that way. When I thin paint with water, it's not to make it go farther. It's because that's the consistency I need that paint to be. But if there's not enough paint on the canvas, you need more paint on not enough paint on the palette, then you need more paint on the palette. That's the answer. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Salu. I hope I'm saying that right. Any recommendations for sites with royalty-free reference images? Pixabay is my favorite. They're my go-to for that. Pixabay? Pixabay. Pixabay. Someone can link that for you, but Pixabay is my favorite. Oops, scroll too far. Eric's done something I can't pronounce says, what was your favorite pet portrait to paint? What is your favorite or best animal you like for art? My favorite pet portrait, I still have it, I still have it, it's up there. I did a greyhound years ago, and I love that guy because the lighting, I was so lucky that the owner, because she posted it on Facebook, and I contacted her, I'm like, can I paint that? It was so amazing, and she let me. So, and I've kept that one. I love that painting. It's on my website, but if you look at the greyhound face, it's an oil, I think it was oil over acrylic, but just the lighting on that was such an amazing photo that I was pretty excited that I got to paint that. So that one was probably my favorite. Another one I really liked of my dog, of Jessie, one of my Italian greyhounds, where there's flowers. It was my very first, this paint is getting too thin, by the way. See how transparent that is? I needed to get more paint. I keep adding water. I'm adding water to make it go further, and it's not working. So now I need to reload the paint. I'm doing the very thing I told you not to do. But I did a portrait of Jessie, and it was my very first YouTube painting video, my time-lapse video, so that one has a special place for me. That one I've done a few. I did a corgi a while back. I really, one of my last horse portraits I did, I really loved how he came out. So I don't know, it's hard. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I'm like, there are a lot of them that I really liked. And what is my favorite or best animal you like for art? It depends on what day you ask me. One day it'll be flamingos, and the next day it's going to be tigers or leopards, definitely depends on the day. I would say if I could only paint one, I would say whales or dolphins, if like that was all I was ever going to do again, just because there's something about the ocean that I just love. Like, it makes me so happy. But I really like birds too. I don't know, I like so many. Linda said, oh, that just scrolled. I started reading and it bumped up. There we go. Linda said, how long will the aerosol can last with the Badger airbrush? I finally got one. Yay! Makes a huge difference. I always hear your voice saying the darkest darks and lightest light. That's funny. It depends on how often you use it. Make sure you're unplugging it or like unscrewing it and taking it apart in between painting sessions, because it will build up like pressure in the hose if you leave that on, and it'll start leaking. But it just depends on how long you use it. I'm not sure of an exact amount. Longer than I thought they would, because I thought I would be replacing them constantly. I do recommend always have a spare can ready to go, because you don't want to run out while you're in the process of painting one night. That's really frustrating. But I don't know time-wise. It's been so long since I used them. But I just remember thinking, wow, that lasted longer than I expected it to. Helpful, isn't it? Mara said, which type of clouds do you find most difficult to paint? Storm clouds are frustrating at times for me. Is there an easier way to paint these? Just keep layering until they look how you want. Pay attention to where your lights and your darks are. I mean, it's like anything else. Look at it as an abstract shape. Copy what you see on that photo to get the right shape. But practice largely, but layer, just keep layering. What is going to happen, which is really nice, once I get so much detail in here, my background doesn't have to be that smooth. Like if I decide this needs to be a brighter blue, I can easily do, actually it does, I can easily do that, and you're not going to see a start and end, like it's not blended smoothly or anything like that, because it's such a small area. Just keep layering and keep working on it until you get it how you like it to be. My first several paintings, I never really liked the clouds of any type very much. I don't find that any type is much more, actually that's not true. Anything that has a sunset, I find to be a little bit more difficult, just in that I have to keep spraying the airbrush, keeping the paint wet, because those colors, the way they blend, it's not more difficult so much as it takes more work. It takes more time to get that quite right. I'm going to lighten this up a bit more. So here I've got a bunch of little guys, and I'm just not pushing as hard with the brush, but it's still loaded pretty well. There's a decent amount of paint on it. Now, none of this in here is done. This isn't a finished, this is just a base. Variation is a big deal. Now, I don't like what clouds look like if you use like a sponge or you're just dabbing everything. They're going to look almost like trees, like they're too bumpy. So I definitely prefer the look when they're painted versus sponged on. The sponging technique is one of those that you can do when you're learning, I guess, but it's not going to look that realistic. It never would. It'll be more like tulle painting. And this is, again, I'm just mostly mapping out where this goes. Actually get more unbleached titanium white in here. Get a big bright color. This one actually is going to keep some of this unbleached titanium white being this bright, and some will darken up a lot. I can't wait for you to see the next stages as this starts to fade out, what a difference it makes. Because this is what I was doing wrong when I would paint clouds. I would just use straight white everywhere, and they didn't look realistic, and I didn't know what, like, why do they look flat? Oh, because I was just using white. Like I was saying with the flowers earlier, white isn't white. White is going to reflect all the colors around it. So that's really, really important to keep in mind. I guess I should finish the sentence I start, right? This is just going to kind of fade out once it gets the other paint in there. Now what I'm going to do is a little bit different because this reference photo I'm using has so many wisps that I really, really like. I'm actually going to use, I'm going to dry this and I'm going to use some transparent mixing white to get my wispy backgrounds, which isn't going to make sense yet, but it will once I brighten things up. Let's go ahead and dry this. Plug your ears. John wants to know, do you add a white base after sketching while oil painting? Oh, huh? I think I need more information for that question. Okay, I'm going to leave that. Let's get some transparent mixing white out. With that, I'm using the Liquitex Heavy Body. They're a little over here. Now with this, let's see how, I'm not sure that this brush will be the right choice. We'll find out, we'll test. Thinning it with a bit of water. The reason that I'm doing the transparent mixing white and not straight white, or titanium white will give me something that looks very foggy, which is not really the look that I want here. So here I get just this light, wispy, and it's giving a decent look for what I want. So they're just kind of thinner, wispier, a little bit farther away than the clouds that will be up close. How do I keep the acrylic from drying out too fast? I use Dick Blick Acrylic and Liquitex Blending Medium. Changes the consistency too much. Yeah, the blending medium I don't like you said. Changes the medium, but water. Honestly, water, and some of this is already starting to dry. I'm going to scrape this before I start using it again because I'm going to start getting chunks pulling up into the paint. But these big clumps stay wet long enough. Now, to be fair, it's really humid here right now, so that helps. Sometimes they'll dry out a bit faster. The Liquitex Heavy Body, those, oh my gosh, that dries out super fast. Not a huge fan of that aspect of them. They'll dry out fast on the paint, on the canvas, and on the palette. This is just going to be peeking through what else is there, so we're just getting some texture. When I say texture, it's not texture, oh, itchy nose. It's not texture like that you could feel when your hand goes over it. It's just texture that you can visually, that you can see. What type of paper do I use for water-soluble graphite pencils? Ideally, a hot press watercolor paper is my favorite. Hot press because it's a lot smoother. The cold press is going to be really bumpy, so not my favorite to go with any type of pencil. But hot press, like Arches, I loved how that worked. I've used in the past the Fabriano hot press, but I don't think I'll be repurchasing that, at least not for anything that I'm going to use water medium for, because it just warped like crazy. I was not a fan of the new batches. I'm going to let that set for now, and let's go ahead. I'm going to start pulling in the darks. I'm going to work actually back and forth. We'll do the darks and the lights. I'm going to scrape up the center, though. Like I said, this is starting to dry. So it's, I'm getting kind of these icky technical term there, chunks that are coming out in the paint. Okay, and I can use the same brush for the majority of this. So that color, I need this darker gray. Actually, I want a purplish tint to it too. So I'm going to throw some magenta in there with the blue. I'm going to throw a little bit of black. And I'm even going to pull some unbleached titanium white to gray it up a bit. It's actually a pretty good color. It's a little too dark. Let's lighten it up a bit more. If I go too dark, it's not a big deal. I mean, anything you're painting, don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. If something doesn't come out right, paint over it. It's no big deal. Like, you can always paint over it. Acrylics are a very forgiving medium when it comes to that. Valencia, this is a canvas pad from Fredericks. I'm working on a 9x12. So, oh, Serena said, will you be doing another oil painting anytime soon? I've been oil painting for a while now, but there's still so much more to learn. Love your work. Thank you. And yes, I'm sure I will. I'm not sure. Like, I don't have one planned right now, but I always have one coming in the future. Painting Mom said, can you explain when to use the unbleached titanium white versus the other? The unbleached titanium white is more like a cream. So if you want more of a cream color, that's when I go with the unbleached titanium white. The titanium white is a cooler white. So unbleached, warm, kind of cream color. If I want something to be very cool, almost like a bluish, very white, that's my titanium white. So we've got some dark, ooh, that might be a little too dark. Add some water, add a little bit more. But like here, I don't want this to be a cooler color. I wanted the warmer color, so that's why I went with unbleached in this case. You know, I want to work wet into wet on this. Let me see if I've got another brush that's, oh, good. I've got another one that is about the right size. Mixing a bit of unbleached titanium white and titanium white. So I'm somewhere in between the two. And while this is wet, I'm going to let these two kind of meet. So this is wet into wet. See how they're blending together? I'm using two brushes at the same time so I can switch quickly back and forth. Now don't over blend with this because it's easy to make a couple of brush strokes and you're like, oh, it looks good. I'm going to keep making more brush strokes. And you end up having just one medium color instead of your definite light, your definite dark. See, now I'll pull those to just in the middle. They kind of blend a bit. And this is still not the last layer. I'll still put more on top of this. We're just starting to get into that. Now, I want that to blend out a bit more. So I'm going to take, let's see what brush will work for this. Do I not have one? Yeah, I guess this will work. This brush, it's a bit stiff, and I'm just going to go in little circles and let that fade. Pull that out just along that edge so it fades down. What palette type am I using? It is a glass palette by New Wave. I've got links to all of the supplies I'm using below in the video description. So if you're interested in any of these, those are there. Or I should anyway. If I don't, they're on my website. Sometimes I forget. Okay, I'm going to leave that area alone for right now. And let's come over here. Need this to be way darker. I'm not mixing wet into wet there. I'm going to take this brush and just smudge those edges. Just a little so it fades. Yeah, this glass palette I absolutely love. I got it a few months ago. I got one for my oils and I loved it so much. I'm like, I need one for acrylics too. So I bought the second one. And I'm using the same setup for both. It's a New Wave glass palette that's sitting inside a Masters, or the Masterson. Where's the lid? I think it's Masterson. Palette. And it is so nice. Actually, I'm going to start down here. It is so easy to clean and work on. And yeah, I'm really, that was one of those purchases that I'm like, why did I not do this earlier? Because the way I was working before on tinfoil, while it worked, it was really wasteful and I couldn't save paint like I can now. I'm going to soften those edges just a bit. A little bit more water. Now, some of this will need to be way darker than what I've got, but this is a start to start just building up an idea of where my lights and my darks are going to go. I'm just going to dab a little bit of those edges, not too much. Don't overblend. Can't stress that part enough. That actually looks really weird right there. Let's. Judy said, why do artists put a dark backdrop behind their easel? What is the advantage? It films well. It looks good on video, I think. Better than, like, when do you mean for people who are taking video? Because I did that, Space Traveler, no, this won't be a time lapse. I may do another cloud demonstration in a time lapse, but not this one. Probably. I may take that back. I'm filming it. Am I filming? I'm still filming. Maybe I'll change my mind. But the back, if you mean like whether it be for photograph or for video, it just looks nice. If you go way back to my original, like my very, very first time-lapse videos, you could see, at first you could see the bookshelf that I had next to the easel, and it looked terrible, it looked messy, it just didn't look nice, and it drew attention away from what I was working on. And then after that, I had a light-colored backdrop. It was just a drop cloth, a canvas drop cloth that I got from the hardware store. I just like pinned that up behind the easel to cover the bookshelf, and it still didn't look very good. Having the dark, I definitely think looked better. Here I'm on the light easel or the light board. I don't like how this looks. I've been tempted to spray paint this black or dark gray or something. Let's see. Eric said, what is your favorite cast of clouds to paint? What type of light? I don't have a favorite, honestly. I've painted so many different that's definitely one I cannot give you a good answer for. I'm really liking these right now. I actually don't know the names of the different types of clouds. I've looked them up before. I never remember. Thelma wants to know how many mediums I explored before I found my favorites. Most of them. I don't know. I mean, I started, a lot of it was just what I had available to me. I was extremely poor, so I didn't have the money to buy most things. I mean, it was, you know, pick one and so graphite, because that was cheap. The only reason I had colored pencils, my Prismacolors, was because my high school let us keep the ones we had been using. So I had those, and then I had the acrylics that I bought, and I couldn't afford to buy anything else besides that. I had done watercolor, kind of crappy, like Crayola probably, watercolor. I don't even think they were name brand enough to be Crayola. But I had done that, and then I would use pastels like charcoal that I bought at, it was kind of like a Walgreens or CVS that was near my house where I lived at the time. I had bought those when I was a teenager. I was using those a lot, but those were the majority charcoal because that's inexpensive. A lot of it was just what I had the means to buy and what was on sale at the time. But acrylics, I knew I liked because I had used those in high school, and they allowed me to create the marine life that that was my goal at the time. And so most of the work that I had seen done by other artists were being done with the acrylics. So that was a huge draw for me, just seeing what other artists were doing with them. But I mean, over the years, I've tried lots and lots of different things. And it seems like more, like lately, every time I try something new, it ends up like my new favorite, like watercolor pencils that I thought I was going to hate. And I love them. So I'm not sure that answers your question at all. Actually, I'm fairly certain it answered nothing. Good question. I just don't have a good answer. Let's see. I'd love to see your reference photo. Go to Pixabay. I don't have it. It's not on this computer, so it's not something I can show you. I'm not copying that close, but yeah, I'll see about doing that in the future, but You can find it on Pixabay. It's when it had like trees, a single tree in the middle of the thing. I'm just using the clouds off of it. Hello, Shiny said, this morning I watched a live stream of yours, Acrylic Landscapes with the River. Did I do a live stream with that? I was looking, but mainly listening. I thought you were painting a sandwich for 30 minutes. I need glasses. I don't even remember painting doing a live stream with an acrylic landscape in a river. I don't remember. Was that the one with the whale? Maybe? The whale swimming through? I don't know if I live streamed that or not. Yeah, for the reference photo, I need to remember to get that on the computer before I live stream, because that probably would be good. But it doesn't, I mean, it's only going to be so helpful because I'm not copying it exactly. It's just kind of getting the general shape of the clouds. This paint is definitely starting to dry, so I need to reload it and get some water on there. Do you guys hear that? I think this may be the first time today that dog hasn't been barking. The sound of silence. What kind of brush is best for using OMS? I used watercolor brush. I think it's a nylon hair at the moment. I use a Taklon bristle brush. They're my favorite. They're actually the same kind of brush I'm using here, just smaller. A Filbert Taklon is the one that I usually use, sometimes a round, if I need something really small. So this is still wet, starting to dry a little bit. Just these little, the purple into the unbleached titanium white. This is still wet here too, so it's blending just a bit. I took a painting, Graylin said, I took a painting class a year ago, and the professor told me there was a liquid to use over your painting to enhance the lights and darks. Any idea? He meant varnishing it. Just take a varnish, like I use the Liquitex gloss. A gloss varnish is going to do that. And it basically takes a painting that's matte, when you put it over it, it makes it look like the paint is wet again. Like that shiny high gloss. That's what he's talking about. Joseph said he thinks it was a painting of trees video. I paint so many things that I just can never remember. I'm looking around my room, I'm like, I don't think I see it in here. I can't think off the top of my head what it is right now. Like, I can't picture which specific one. Still. Mara Black said, do you prefer clouds to be just clouds in the sky, or to have like other effects like the sun peeking through, or have, it depends on what I'm trying to accomplish. I don't necessarily have one single preference. I think sometimes it'll look best if you go, have sun coming through and have more contrast, and sometimes I think it looks best if they're simple and just in the background and aren't pulling attention away from whatever the subject is. It completely depends on the situation. So we'll get a lot more of the darks in here in just a minute. Vladimir said, can you explain why my Winton Fine Hog oil brush is scratchy when I put my water-soluble paint on my canvas, but use a cheap synthetic brush for my artist loft and it blends better? Just a different type of bristles. I mean, some bristles, even like one brand of synthetic hog hair may be way stiffer than another brand, and that's probably what's happening there. I don't have the Winsor & Newton one, so I haven't used theirs. So I'm not really sure, but usually something like that just means it's a difference. Like one brand's Taklon is not going to be the exact same as the next brand's. And that's the same with no matter what kind of brush you're talking about. You're going to get variation in there. Get some little guys in there. I'm twisting and turning the brush, just getting some variation in these strokes. I'm going to pull some of these darker wisps. You can't see them that well, but they'll just kind of be very subtle against the blue in some of these areas. I'm actually going to go ahead and mix my darker blue now. It's still gray, so I'm going to just let it mix in with this grayish purple color. But I'm going to darken it a lot more. And this one does have more of a blue tint. I don't know if that's going to be dark enough. Yeah, that's dark enough. It is definitely dark enough. Eric said, I like to take pictures, whoops, there it went, of clouds. Have you ever tried this for your painting using a reference photo picture from clouds you've taken by your own? Yes, I have. Actually, usually will take photos with my cell phone. It seems like every time I'm in the car, that's when I see the coolest clouds. Luckily, I don't drive, so my husband's always the one driving, and I can go ahead and take all the fun photos. But yeah, I've definitely done that a lot. That is too blue. I need to gray that up just a bit, so we'll add a little bit of the unbleached titanium white and some black. I guess that's okay. I'm going to have to soften that out along those edges. Just that paint underneath is wet, so what's happening is that's starting to lift in a way I don't want, so I need to dry this. Let's try to soften this out, and then I'm going to dry the paint before I go on with this color, because that is not what I want that to look like. Actually, let's take a mop brush. See if I can get rid of a few of those brush strokes. That's a hot mess. Okay, so let's rinse out the brushes. I'm going to dry that, answer some questions while we let it finish drying, and then I can go over it with this color, the darker colors, because what's happening, I'm starting to lift the grayish color, the gray purple wasn't drying enough, and I'm I'm lifting it. So not what I want to happen. Plug your ears. Joseph said that painting was trees and grass on the right side with the river in the foreground, trees and grass reflecting in the moody clouds, but isn't. Oh, was that the one where I was attempting to make it look like the trees were clouds? That was an oil painting that I was trying to make the bushes, but it was dark, so it just looked like dark trees instead of clouds. I need to redo it with daytime clouds so it looks like clouds. Was it that one? I think it was that one. JD said, I didn't know you use a blow dryer in your paintings. Only the acrylics. Well, acrylics and then any like watercolor or Inktense. This may pull up. I don't know if that's dry enough. Let's find out. Okay, so I'm going to reload with that grayish blue. Yeah, this looks a little bit better. Not quite dark enough. I've got too much water. Since this started to dry, I added more water, but it was too much. Let's pull. Let's see if that'll be dark enough. That's better. Let's smudge that. Oop, this brush has too much water on it. There we go. If you have too much water, it just erases basically instead of smudging edges. It is hot air. Let's gray it up just a bit with the unbleached titanium white. So So you can see, well, maybe you can see, there are little dots on the canvas showing through. Well, I can see them here from this canvas not being super smooth. But if you have a smoother canvas, you'll get a smoother look. The canvas you use does matter. For practice, doesn't matter to me. But if I were trying to make like the most amazing painting ever that I've ever done, I'm going to want something that's a bit smoother for this. This is definitely giving me that bumpy dry brush look that I don't love. Where did my paper towel go? I lost the paper towel. Oh, there it is. There's a bit too much water on this brush, so it's erasing or pulling off more than I want by a lot. Dry off. Pull some of the darks in here, and then I'm going to glaze a bit over this and it'll soften everything out. Then we will work on the highlights. Just smudge those edges. Hello, Shiny said the sandwich live stream you did was the last one in playlist. Colored pencil. Oh, the colored pencil one. Yeah, no, now I know which one you're talking about. Oh, my battery is going to die. Hold on. I didn't realize this wasn't plugged in. That's an emergency. Where is my battery? I'm glad it warned me before it just shut off. Okay, we are plugged in. Oops. That could have been bad. Hopefully the battery will charge faster than it's draining now. You know, you spend so much time getting everything ready, and the most simple things like plugging in the computer don't happen. I'm almost just glazing at this point because there's so much water on my brush. And see how I'm not covering all of that purple gray? It's just a bit here and there. This I definitely needed a lot more of the bluish tone. Oops, too much water on the blending brush. You have to balance how much water is on the stiff, this is a stiff brush, how much water is on the brush that you're blending with versus how much water is on the brush you're applying the paint with. It's like when this has too much water, you want less water here. If this has water, you want less here. You've got to, there's no like definite formula other than play with it and figure it out. But I got to use the Inktense pans more outside. I have not, but I did go on a walk in the area that I used them last time this week. It would definitely be fun to take those to the zoo and sketch the animals. It's such a compact, easy, like, it will fit in any bag. I'm really happy they made those. Do I see the face in the clouds yet? Oh, I don't think I want to look for it. See kind of a mushroom up here. Darken a little bit of this up. Oh, I need more of that purple. Ooh, that's starting to dry. Let's mix some of that. The grayish purple. going to go ahead and start pulling some definite highlights into these now. And I think I want more of a peach color in the clouds, so I'm going to mix. I'm going to still use the unbleached titanium white, but let's pull teeny bit of red and a teeny bit of, I'm going to go with this yellow because it's more translucent. Maybe a teeny bit more. Too much yellow. That is not the yellow I want. Let's see, a little bit more red. Now we're getting to where I want it. Maybe more peach. Maybe I lied. Let's see how this looks. It is no different. All that mixing, it almost looks no different than what I already had. Okay, let's make it a little bit more peach. It looks, whoa. Okay, I think I may have done a little bit of overkill there. Let's see what that looks like on. And more yellow. Actually, you know what? I'm wondering if, let's see what this looks like if I apply it with a round brush. Like everything with art, you're just experimenting. I don't know all the answers. That doesn't mean I can't produce whatever my goal is. Like, you have to experiment constantly, try different things. If you're not sure something's going to look good, you have to try it to find out if it'll work for you. So let's see if the round will look good. It may be too harsh of a point. Ooh, I think this will actually give me, I think I like it. Okay, I just have to kind of move it around in a way that gives me variation. Yeah, I'm liking this round brush for this. This one is a number 8 round. And it's just a generic. I have no idea who it's from. Sharon said, I live in hot Australia, bought the new Wave palette with the Lightbox too. Amazed at how long the paint stays wet. Last week's evening here. Glad I took the plunge and got it at Blick. Love your work. Yeah, it's definitely, I'm surprised how long paint can stay wet in this setup. Like, really surprised. Even with the paper towel, I didn't think it would stay wet as long as it has. I mean, it'll stay weeks. I'll open it, and this is, most of this paint, this is new, and that is new. The rest of this is paint that has been sitting in here for weeks. I love it. Valerie said, just FYI, there are times of lagging but not buffering. Yeah, and there's nothing I can do to fix it because I don't know why it's doing that. I don't have anything running on the computer. I'm using the most simple setup. I think I just need a new computer, but I don't have money for that right now. I think I need that, and I need a new camera setup for the live streams for sure. But that is going to have to wait. It may just be my internet being a jerk today. That's entirely possible. Let's see, am I running out of battery, or is it going up? Okay, it is I'm gaining battery life instead of losing it, so that's good. But it's always plugged in when I do the live stream, so I don't think that's it. Could be, I don't know. Is it the focus is a problem? Hold on. If it's going out of focus, that I might. Let me see if I have autofocus. I should have turned it off, but it's possible it's back on. Sometimes when I change stuff, nope, not autofocus. What happens if I change this? Whoa, that's not good. We're not going to do that. Nope, autofocus isn't on, so there's nothing I can do there. Sorry. Okay. Now most of this where I'm putting this peach color, I'm going to come back through with the unbleached titanium white. And if you don't have unbleached titanium white, you can mix it with just browns, different yellows, oranges. You know, you're basically just mixing a cream color. I used to mix my own out of the titanium white. I would usually use yellow ochre or yellow oxide, and then realized, why am I doing this? Like, I'm wasting time because I'm constantly having to mix that color that I use all the time. So now I just buy it, but I used to mix it all the time. Valerie said she had issues live streaming yesterday, so it could be YouTube. I don't know. My resolution settings are the same as they always are. I just double checked that. From what I'm seeing, it looks fine. I may not have been looking at the same time that you did when you were seeing problems, but what I'm seeing right now on the screen, I don't see anything wrong. I mean, it's not as crisp as I normally have in my videos, but that's just what this camera gives me. Now I'm going to really brighten some of this up. And yes, I'm using Wi-Fi, but I always use Wi-Fi. That has never changed. So I'm going to mix some unbleached titanium white with the titanium white just to brighten it up a bit more. This may be too bright. Yeah. Whoa. And Alexa thinks I was talking to her. Too bright. Let's go with just that. And so now I'm just going to mix this. I don't want to cover all of that orange, the peach color that I just did. See, I'm kind of wiggling the brush and getting that variation in there. Gail says it looks good here. I always blame it on solar flares. Mara Black said, what color would you say should never be included in clouds? I've seen clouds with such yellow tinge that it looks like the sky had a bad infection. It was awful looking. You know, I avoid greens. But then I've seen where greens were used and it looked good. But usually most of the time when I've seen somebody attempt to get green, it wasn't even usually it happens because someone's trying to fade a yellow sunset up into blue and they didn't fade it quite right. The transition of color was bad and they ended up with green where they didn't necessarily need or want green. So that's the color that I try to avoid having in my sky most of the time. Now there are exceptions depending on what look you're going for. There are always exceptions to everything, but more often than not, green is the one that I try to hold out. And that usually just happens because of the yellow and the blue mixing together. Pushing a little too hard on that brush. Maybe lighten that up to get some variation at that edge. And down here. I definitely see the lag you guys are talking about, though. It's been doing that on and off all night, I think. Unpleasant. Yeah, I even didn't try my good camera tonight because I figured the lag, you know, with the lag we had last week. Now I'm thinking it didn't necessarily have to do with the camera. So you see again with the variation there. But see now how I'm getting these definite dark areas and light areas, and there's just a good mixture of everything together. I'm going to, let's let this dry. Actually, I take it back. I'm going to put a few more highlights, go a bit brighter, and then I'm going to glaze over some of this. But for all of these clouds, the big thing is look at how they're not just white. I think that that is really, really important when painting clouds. Oops, that's going to be too dark. Thanks, Eric's. Rain said, I saw the most incredible sunset here last year, and it had green in it, plain as day, that faded to teal and blue. See, there are times I've seen that. I know what you're talking about. It happens, and it can look good. It's just that usually when I see artists do, usually, not always, I should say more with beginners, it's because they blended the blue where they didn't mean for it to blend in with the yellow, and it didn't quite work. But it's not always. Like you said, sometimes there are times that it looks really good. The thing, it's always a little bit frustrating for me. I like to have a definite, this is right, this is wrong, these are the rules, you follow the rules. But with art, it doesn't work that way at all. So my mind has to kind of like work itself how it wants to understand the world, because there is not a definite one right, one wrong. Look how many colors. So we've got this peach color, we had the unbleached titanium white, then we had titanium white mixed with white, we had the grayish purple, and then the bluish gray, like the darker color. So there's a lot of colors I'm mixing in here with these clouds. We definitely need some lighter areas down here. I am glad I could help, Graylin. Just remember, even though you may think, and it's something, I mean, I do too. I know what clouds look like. I don't need a reference photo. You will usually come up with baked potatoes. Unless you've painted hundreds and hundreds of paintings with clouds, don't, where you use the reference photo or where you looked at the sky. Just look at something. I mean, you don't need a photo. You could just go outside if you want. But if you've not done that, don't try necessarily painting from memory unless you want something that has a very unnatural feel to it. Clouds especially are a funny one because we all think, like, we've all seen a million clouds. We know what they look like. No, we don't. Oh, good. It looks like a bunch of you guys are working on clouds or have cloud paintings coming up. Make sure, too, when you find a brushstroke and you're like, wow, that brushstroke looks really good, don't just keep repeating it over and over again. Get like it's anything with nature. You've got to have variation. I don't even know if I'm going to end up glazing over this. I'm kind of liking where this is going now as I build this up. I don't know that it needs a glaze. Definitely need lighter in there. Let's get some more titanium white as I get down here. I need to brighten this way up for it to show up. Add a bit of water. Twist that into the brush. There we go. Again, variation. I'm dabbing my finger in it to smudge it so that it's not too uniform. It kind of helps soften that out and give me a bit more variation there. No matter what medium you're working in, colored pencil, pastels, oil paint, you're going to want to make sure, pay attention to the same things as far as, don't just make everything white. Look at all of the colors in here. Now, these ones are a bit on the extreme side. That's one of the reasons I chose this reference photo, or these clouds. I really liked all of the colors in them. But even with white, it wouldn't be straight white. You're going to have whatever blue of the sky would be reflecting in there. So unless it's an overexposed photo, you usually don't want straight white. We can look at the clouds in the sky and think that they're straight white, but if you were to take a photo, a good photo, not an overexposed one, I mean, they're usually not going to be just titanium white. You're going to have that variation. No matter what, when you're using white flowers, white clouds, a white dress that somebody's wearing, there should be other colors. I see this, now one thing you will see sometimes is where someone's taking a photo of someone wearing a white shirt or a white dress, and the photographer overexposed it really badly. That, as an artist, I think you want to go through and make it better if you can, if you're using that as a reference photo, because that overexposed white can really take away, unless you're going for something with kind of an abstract-y feel, which in that case would work well. But it can definitely make your work look very flat, and that's one of the problems that you'll have people talk about with using a reference photo, like, oh, the work looks flat. Well, in that case, yeah, if something's overexposed like that, it can definitely make things look flat. And that's where, as an artist, you need to know where things should have curves, or just choose a better reference photo. Sometimes we can take it into Lightroom or Photoshop a photo that's overexposed and make adjustments that will work. Sometimes it will help, depending on how badly the photo was taken. Gail said hers looks like mashed taters. Now I want some. I want some too. I could live off mashed potatoes if my joints can I can't have carbs much because of my joints with the fibromyalgia. It makes things really angry, so I have to avoid carbs like that. But I could live off of that, like, happily, if it weren't for that fact. Graylin said, I've been using dark grays, blues, purple, and never once thought of using yellows and peaches along with white for clouds. I was so focused on the darks and white, I forgot about the obvious. Yeah, and it doesn't need a lot. Just a little bit, I think, looks really nice. Just very subtle. Let's get a lot of these little guys. So the other thing is, notice the difference in size in some of these brush strokes. So as I get down here, I've got a lot of little guys. Really pulling some of these out, brightening up a lot more. Let's see. Actually, I want to pull some of this purple. Oh, there's purple's pretty much dry. Let's see if I can mix some more there. Starting to get chunks. That paint's starting to dry. I really should scrape it, but I'm lazy. I'm gonna leave it. If this were a painting that I really cared about, like the end result had to be perfect, then I would want to scrape that where the paints are starting to dry, because it will start to get kind of chunky. Pulling some of this pale purplish gray. A few more spots in here. Okay, I want that to dry, and I want to get some more wisps now in the clouds around. Actually, this color may work pretty well. kinda. Not amazing. Let's see. Sharon said, flying interstate, got the most unreal cloud pictures from window. Never seen anything like these before or since. Painted them, would be unreal. Also, painting storm clouds and sea at the moment. Such a pretty I love stormy sea scenes. It's so pretty. Gail said, oh my gosh, overexposed wedding dresses drive me nuts. The poor bride and her dress for the details with a photographer basically uses whiteout. Yeah, it's, I mean, I've had people contact me about painting things, and it's like that dress, just, there's no way for me to make that look good. I can't see anything. I can't even Photoshop detail into it. The photographer just did such a bad job. I mean, as a wedding photographer, that's something that you have to be very well aware of, I think. With the whites of the dress, you've got to know how to set your camera. I don't know how to do it. I'm not a photographer. But as an actual photographer charging people money, they need to know how to do that. Okay, plug your ears. I'm going to take my transparent mixing white, and I'm going to get some of the wisps more in here. I may even use a little bit of regular titanium white, but I also want to pull some of that to soften out a bunch on the clouds themselves. It's going to lighten them a bit, but it'll also soften the harshness between some of these brush strokes. See how soft that looks now? You can still see the lights and darks because it is just translucent. It is going to lighten that up, so I need to be aware of that where I put this. But it gives me a really nice soft feel on areas that are a bit on the way too harsh side. Now, at this point, I'm not really worrying too much about the reference photo. I mean, I've got my general shape of the clouds. Now it's more, what can I do to mine that I think might look better? Lighten down here up a bunch. I'm just going to throw that on there pretty thick. I'm going to make a bunch of wispy guys back here. That softens that up and lightens it. So you don't want to put this everywhere. You want to be aware of what areas you don't want to lighten up. Some different, oh, this paint, see how it's starting to dry? I'm getting chunks. Whoa, that's not what I wanted in there. I need to move this. I'm just going to scrape that area away so I can start fresh right there, because it's starting to give me chunks on my canvas. So let's start with a fresh batch. That is that heavy body. All of the Liquitex heavy body paints I've used, they dry so annoyingly fast. I love how this softens stuff up, though. Palate, Rachel? Now in here, I've got a few wisps that are definitely darker. Now, if I wanted something to look really realistic at this point, I would be using my airbrush for some of these wisps. There's just, it will give you a look you just don't get with a paintbrush. So there, I would do this differently if I really wanted a certain look, you know, wanted that realistic feel, that soft feel, but this can go pretty close. I need to smudge that out. See, I'm just smudging the edges, leave the inside alone. If that inside needs to be smudged or blended, grab your mop brush, just because that's wet paint. But the edges where you're blending the dry into, or the wet into the dry, only blend the edges. Don't, if you keep blending the inside, it just lifts the paint off. It doesn't really work right. Okay. Jeff says to keep the chunks on the canvas because it looks cool. I'm okay with chunks on the canvas if they're intentional. And in order to be intentional, they pretty much have to be all over the place. A random chunk of paint that is nowhere else is a pretty good indication that the artist did not do the best job. So you know, with anything with art, different things I think are fine as long as it was intentional. If it happened as an accident and is clearly only in one spot because it was an accident, then that I don't like. So I'm using a bit more with my titanium white so that it really shows up. Just build and layer. And doing a sky, I mean, if it's got this much variation, again, I'm mixing titanium white and transparent mixing white here, this much variation, it takes time. It is a definite layering process. It's not something that happens in 5 minutes. And I wish, I mean, I think if I look back and if somebody could have given me one bit of advice that would have made such, and actually, I think Jaime did mention something like that to me at one point. That probably was the thing that made the difference. But I mean, if I look back at when I first started painting, the one thing that would have made the biggest difference to me was when I was 19 years old, is if somebody said, that thing that you're trying to make happen in 5, 10, 20 minutes should take you 2 days. You know, something like that. That bit of information to me is such a big deal, because when I started painting, and I think that even now, of course, this was way before YouTube, way before the internet, but even now with you guys watching the time-lapse tutorials, you watch them and you're like, okay, it's a 5-minute video, 10-minute video, I can do this really quickly. No, you need to understand how long this takes and put the time needed into it. Don't rush it. I mean, I've been sitting here for 2 hours almost, just painting this little cloud that is still, you know, I could work on this for hours longer if I wanted to really make it look amazing. But understand that things are going to take a lot of layering, and it takes a lot of time. Don't think, I mean, when you expect something to take 5 minutes, that should be a lot longer. Your work is not going to come out the same as somebody who puts in the necessary time. That is a horrible baked potato. Blend into that cloud. That doesn't look right. There we go. These little wispy guys. Ernesto asked if glazing with acrylics is easier or more difficult than oils. It's about the same. It's just faster with acrylics, but the technique of actually glazing, it's not easy. I wouldn't say one is easier than the other. They're pretty much the same, other than the dry time with acrylics, because it dries fast. You can go on to your next glaze right away. So you can work faster with acrylics, but the glazing portion of it, wet into wet, way easier with oils. But glazing, it's just about the same, I would say. Now the color is not exact, it's kind of close. The oranges are a little bit different. I'll have to post a photo of this on social media somewhere so you guys can see. I always say that and always forget to, but I'll try to remember to tonight. But I always say that too, don't I? But the colors are a little bit more with the peach than what I'm seeing on my screen. And I can sit here, I mean, I could call this done now, or I can sit and keep messing with it. It just depends on what you want. I mean, these are suitable clouds. They're fine. But we've still got 20 minutes, so I'll keep working. And if you guys have more questions, go ahead and ask them now, since I'm not really doing anything too crazy. I can definitely talk while I do this. I'm going to take this brush, it's a little bit more stiff, just spread that around these little distant guys. One thing, watch when I blend with the second brush, it's a little smudge and then stop, a little smudge and then stop. It's not a constant blend and blend and blend and blend. Caryn, glazing is where you're making a transparent mix of paint. So like, I wouldn't want to use titanium white. It's opaque. That would not, you're not going to glaze with that. It's taking a transparent color like my blues or my purples, and I thin it down with either glazing medium or water, and so that it's more translucent, and I tint the color. I can wash it over everything and it just tints the color. Soften some of that up. So it's still dark, but that transparent mixing white is softening it up quite a bit there. Too harsh. Let's just wipe that over that whole thing. Let's see, which glazing medium, what do you recommend? I use the one by Liquitex. It is a glossy one. Has a green label. It's Liquitex glazing medium. Trying to decide if I want to pull any more blue. Let's tint the color. Actually, I'll show you how to glaze real quick. Let's say this blue, I want it to be more of like a green, like closer to green on the color wheel, a warmer blue. I've got a cooler, almost ultramarine blue there. So let's warm that up. Get these brushes, nozzles are fine. I'm going to use water, and I'm going to take my blue. This is the blue I was using. I could just use phthalo blue, but let's just use those. I'll mix the color that I want. I'm going to add some water, so it's pretty thin. Okay, that's a little too thin. More paint. Too thin isn't a good idea either. If it's too thin, it just kind of runs and it doesn't work well. The more water you add, the more translucent it is, but also the less adhesive it is. So you'll be able to like scrape it off where you might not want to. So you don't want to thin it out too much. If it's running, it's definitely too thin. But watch how I can take this color and just go right over and tint that color that's under it. Just smudge that out a bit. Actually, it'll be better to use the mop brush. See how it makes it a little bit darker? I'm actually going to add a bit more green so that that mixes in more. Ah, crap. Sorry, just dropped it into an opaque color. I need to remix that because I would have just gotten, on my paper towel that I dabbed it onto, I would have just gotten a lot of peach, which would not work for the glaze. There's a nice color there. I'm going to smudge that out. So see, it's just barely tinting that color. Now I'm using phthalo green because phthalo green is a bluish green. And I mixed it in with blue, so I basically just warmed up the blue that I was using. Yeah, you can glaze just with water. You don't have to use a medium. Sometimes it looks better if you use the medium, but sometimes it'll look better with water depending on what you're trying to do. And with that, honestly, you just need to experiment and see which works better. Ooh, see, too much green because I went over that. Let's get rid of that. That doesn't look good at all. if there's anything else I really want to do to this. Decisions. Now let's get some of this purple in here again. Back with the, actually, need to scrape this off. This is definitely gonna have chunks that I don't want there. See, this is what I'm loving with this palette. That was always a problem for me when I was using either the plastic, the peel off palettes, or because that has to dry to be able to peel off, or with the tinfoil that I used to use, is that I couldn't just clean a spot. I had to just get a new piece of foil. I was wasting a lot of paint with those. It is amazing with this setup how far the paint will go. So I'm going to mix my grayish purple again. Oops, too purple. Darken that up. This isn't necessarily the color I wanted, but I think I'm going to add this all over the place. Now, if you mix a color like this is much more purple than anything I've used on another part. Oh, not too much more, but it is a little bit more purple. Make sure you add it in more than one spot. Like I wouldn't want to just put it there and that's the only spot that this exact shade of purple is. Ooh, yes, we are going to kind of glaze this, even though I've got some opaque colors. This is going to soften some of this out really nicely. I'm liking this. Okay, this is fun. Oops, I don't need that brush. That can go down. Kale wants me to add a bird. Not in 12 minutes. Can we use a blade on fiberglass or just glass? Fiberglass is going to be different. It can scratch and it's a more porous thing, so I'm not sure. I wouldn't like, I mean, even acrylic or something like that that was very, like a thick piece would scratch like, you'd end up with scratches all over. So it probably is not going to be the best choice for you. I've known of people who used glass from like picture frames or just glass like that, sheets of that. You have to be careful because that's way thinner and it's going to crack easier. This is a much thicker, it's like, I think this one's actually tempered glass, but I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me. You have to look at the description. But it doesn't, it is definitely more sturdy than a lot of other bits of glass. Oh, this is giving me a really nice soft, I wanted this purplish tone, so I'm loving this. Will I be doing more graphite tutorials soon? Sometime. I'm not sure when, but I'm sure I will. I want to play more with the graphite powder. That was really fun to do the background. I think I used that on, what did I use that on, the chicken? I used that on something, and I really like the results that came out with. Gail said, do I have a favorite brand of makeup brush that I use? Yes, I think it's in the video description. This one is, it's labeled as Precision Beauty, but I have one that has the orange handle. This one, the Precision Beauty now on Amazon, doesn't look like this. It has like a wooden handle, and I'm not sure how much that weighs, because if it weighs too much, it's not going to work well. This is like a aluminum type. I don't know what kind of metal they use. But there's another one, this one that looks almost the same. This one is Real Techniques. This one says it's by Sam and Nick. It's almost the same. Very, very similar, and this one works. I think I like this one better. It's a little bit more flat, but honestly, they both work okay. They're both just powder brushes. But I have a link to this one in the video description. This one I can't find on the Precision Beauty one on Amazon like this anymore. You may be able to find it at like Ulta or even Target might have them in their makeup section. Can a really soft blush brush be used instead of a mop brush? That's what this is. Well, it's a powder brush, but that's what I'm using. So yes, and they don't tip, well, you can get cheap ones, but usually they don't shed as much as a paintbrush, which is why I've switched to them. I used to use the actual paintbrush mop brushes, and they shed so bad. I still do for oil painting, because the ones that I have, I like the texture better than this. Is a bit too soft for my taste with oils. But yeah, the makeup ones work. Those are my preference for acrylics. See, as I tint the color, you can still see the detail underneath, but it tones certain areas down. And this looks so different than what I'm seeing on the screen. So I definitely will have to get the photo of this for you guys over on Instagram tonight. Probably Twitter and Facebook too. Definitely Instagram, though. That's the one I post on more often. If you're not following me on Instagram, I post more there. I really like Instagram because occasionally somebody will find a way to make an annoying political meme, but usually the stuff with Instagram, that the nonstop drama of people being jerks to each other over politics that you get on Facebook, you don't typically get it on Instagram as much, because usually it's people posting photos. So I spend much more time on Instagram than I do anywhere else, Instagram or Twitter. Twitter, though, you still have a bunch of jerks. I just don't follow many who behave that way. But Facebook was definitely getting to be a bit much for me, with just people being such jerks to each other. It's like, I don't care what you believe, just don't be so, like, do you have to be such a jerk? People are allowed to disagree without flipping out on each other. So anyway, Instagram, yes, if you want to see more of the stuff that I'm posting, I definitely post more on Instagram than anywhere else. Facebook, it's usually like, here are links to other videos that I've done, but Facebook's not sharing my content, anyone's content really anymore, but the art pages or business pages. So you're not going to see much there anyway. So Facebook's definitely, besides the art group I still love, but your art pages, it's gotten to the point where it's almost pointless. I mean, they share it with some people, but not enough. They definitely filter that content so heavily that I don't put a bunch of time into that anymore. Oops. Jeff wants to know how you clean your makeup brushes. Good question. Well, okay, my actual makeup brushes for my makeup's different. But for these brushes, I just dip the tip in the water, just like that. Just barely the tips go in the water. You don't want much, because if the whole brush is, the brush will take a while to dry. But you should only ever be getting paint barely on the tips. If you're getting like a lot of paint, you're not using this brush right. So I just rinse the tip of the brush in the water. Actually, I'll go ahead and do that now. So just the tips are wet, just barely right there. And then I take my paper towel, and I rub that in circles on there until it's dry. See how it's just a little bit of paint? Because not much is on there. It just gets a little bit. And then it's dry and ready to go. But you always want this brush dry and ready to go. You don't want to like get it wet, rinse it, and set it to the side to dry. Because when you go to knead it, that paint will start to dry. And this is going to take too long to dry. So I always have this dry and ready to go. Any tips for cleaning those blending brush? Oh, got you on that one. But that usually works just fine. It's just the tips of the brush should need to be cleaned. And no, I would not use odorless mineral spirits or paint thinner of any kind on this with acrylic brushes. I don't use that at all. I don't like how it makes the brushes weird for when I paint in acrylic. So I only use water, or you can use, let's say you let it dry out really bad and it was getting crunchy, then use the old masters. I don't know. There's a link on my website. If you go under the supply list for acrylics, I don't know if I have it on this one, but that brush cleaner is my favorite, and it conditions the brushes. So that, like when I'm done painting, I can soak it up, lather it up, let it set for an hour, overnight, whatever, and then repeat the process, and that can sometimes restore really damaged brushes. So yeah, this is pretty much, actually, I need to get a bit more of my green in here, because it's like in two spots. So let's pull that in a couple more so that it's not just in those areas. Looks a little weird. It's not just green, it's the bluish green really, or greenish blue, however you want to word that. That works. Then I'll post a photo. This looks more like blotchy with the brush strokes. The way that it's showing is kind of weird, what you're seeing here. Again, go take a look at it over on Instagram, and that will you'll see these are way, way softer. You can leave them harsh like this. This has a more, like a looser feel to it, what you're seeing, than what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing is much, much softer in this whole area. And within the next hour or two, I'll have that photo up for you guys. Murphy's oil is great. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people, Barbara, recommend Murphy's oil. I've not used it, but I've heard a lot of people use that. Add a B. Yeah, I've got only a couple minutes left, so I'm not going to add anything to that. Would be cute, though. Maybe I'll save this and add that on another. We can keep adding to it, live stream to live stream, keep adding stuff to it. Lynn said, best tip I ever had when I was beginning. Which tip was that? Oh, the Murphy's oil. Yeah. I don't even own any of that, so I've not tried it. Goo Gone is another one I've heard people swear by. What brushes are best for someone starting with acrylics? Tamara, if you've not seen it, yesterday I posted a video, an intro to acrylics, and I show you the brushes that I'm using and like all the supplies that I'm using there. But for acrylics in general, or pretty much Taklon bristled filberts, I use more than anything else. The bristles are only purple because they're stained. They used to be white, but either the gold or the white Taklon, and the filbert where it's rounded, I use that for so many things. If I'm painting buildings or something that needs a straight line, then I want to go with a flat brush. But Taklon bristles, those are my main brush that I use. I do use some cheapy synthetic hog hair type brushes like this for blending, and I have a supply list in that video, the one it shows you how to paint a copper banded butterfly fish, but those I'll use for blending out like this. I mean, just a variety there. Mostly the Taklon bristle. I don't use any watercolor brushes because they're just too soft for acrylics. I don't like the looks that I get with those. But for my liner brush, I like synthetic hog hair. The Hobby Lobby synthetic hog hair liner is my absolute favorite. Their Taklon bristle brushes I really like too. Simply Simmons and Royal Soft Grip both have really nice Taklon bristle brushes. I really like those from them too. Let's see. Oh, Mara says bye for now. So glad to have been able to make it for the stream. Have a great evening. Hello to the assistants into Chicken. He says hi to you. Chicken's been adorable. So let's see. Do I mean the Masters brush cleaner? Yeah, that's probably the one that I need. Whatever. Oh, you're talking to Barbara. You tell us at the end of the live stream, it gets even worse where I cannot pay attention. I'm just like, I'm done. Let's see. Did I miss anything? I think we're caught up. Yeah, if you're getting frustrated with the way that people behave on Facebook, Instagram's definitely better. And it's funny because I only saw one artist posted something that was politically based, a sticker he put on his easel, and people freaked out on him over it. I mean, people on Instagram really do not tolerate they're just like, no political stuff. I unfollowed him because of it. I'm like, that's not, I don't want to see, I'm trying to avoid all of that negativity. But, yeah, it's kind of funny. But if you got frustrated with that kind of drama on Facebook, Instagram is definitely a good alternative for that. I don't see it nearly as much. Now, to be fair, I mostly only follow artists on Instagram, and so, they're mostly posting photos of their art. So that does help. But I definitely find that the climate on Instagram is much happier, people are just kinder to each other there than what I see on Facebook. So besides, of course, like the art groups on Facebook, because those will be more heavily moderated. You don't typically, like our group, we don't allow politics at all. So you're not going to have that kind of drama with us. But yeah, try Instagram if you're not already using it. How often do I replace my brushes? I feel like I'm constantly buying new ones and I never throw out old ones. So here, just to give you an idea, this is one of, I don't even know how many. Like, I have a ton of holders like this, and you're not even going to see it in the whole screen. Like, there's just a ton of brushes. These are, I think these are my acrylic brushes. I think these are all. I'm nearly certain these are acrylics, but it's in my old oil painting. See, that was oil. I don't even know if I've been using these for oils or acrylics. That's oil. That's damaged from oil. I don't know. This looks... That's an acrylic, one of my old acrylics. I think I might have put things in the wrong place in this one. But what I basically do is I just keep buying new ones. And, yeah, I collect them and I don't throw them out. So, and basically every time, I want to say it's once every 3 or 4 weeks over at, where is it? Hobby Lobby. Their generic brushes, their house brand, the Master's Touch, they go on sale for half price. And so I just get like maybe 5 new brushes every time that happens. But I don't really have, like, I don't find that I've ruined anything. I haven't had to throw out a brush in years. They'll get damaged, but sometimes damaged brushes work really well for different techniques. Crystal, that is so awesome to hear. Oh, thank you. Rain said that's me, always buying brushes and never throwing them out. Yeah, I mean, I have brushes, like, I'm sure I can find one really quickly that's just super damaged. Like, I mean, that one's kind of screwed up. See, I don't know if you can tell how it's split right here. I don't even know what I did to that. And it's really stiff, but there's certain techniques where I'm flicking paint, or let's say I'm dabbing to get my, like, trees or whatever. Being split like that, well, if I added water, this will probably dry, right? But even if it didn't, being split like that's going to give me kind of a cool technique that I'm not going to get with what I would consider a healthy brush. So we are done. Again, head over to Instagram. The link is in the description. Within the next hour or two, I'll post a photo because this looks very different to me in person than what you guys are seeing. So I'll try to get a decent photo of that for you guys. But that is it for tonight. Thank you so much for joining. I know either next week or the week after, it's either going to be watercolor pencils or probably it'll be Inktense. It's been a while since I did Inktense. And I'm going to try to have a chicken cam. I'll bring the chicken in his perch if he'll be good and stay where he's supposed to. He always wants to be on my shoulder, so we'll see how that works. But we'll have a chicken cam for you guys. So that should be in the next week or two. But yeah, thanks for joining. Oh, I'm a jerk and didn't mention this. Thank you to my moderators. Make sure to check out their channel. Links are in the video description. Why didn't I mention this earlier? I'm sorry, guys. They both have really cool art channels, so you'll definitely want to subscribe to both of them. But thank you again so much and for joining. We'll see you next week. And then the awkward pause where I go to stop the stream. Bye, guys.